What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and today I'm bringing you a deck that was suggested to me by Lukeanator, and that is a deck centered around Lifesplosion, Cradily, and a bunch of Stage 2s, a couple of which I threw into this deck. And before I get into the actual contents of the deck, just a reminder that if you guys liked this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, click that subscribe button, it helps us out quite a bit, and lets us do more for you guys. And as for the question of the day, there's not going to be a question of the day, just, actually, what's your favorite Stage 2 in the game? I mean, that's simple enough. I know that that's kind of a boring, but I mean, this is a random upload. I normally don't do questions of the day on these, but with this one, I mean, it's just so simple. What is your favorite Stage 2, aka what combination of Stage 2s would you like to see in a Cradily type of deck, or what Stage 2s would you think to put in a Cradily type of deck? The ones that were suggested to me were Vileplume and Vikavolt. I threw in Decidueye and Gallade just because they synergized actually pretty well with them. But I know that there are other Lifesplosion decks like Flygon Dusknoir, among others, and I mean, I guess Empoleon Dusknoir could be one as well. But anyway, what Stage 2s do you think could work together, like in a deck where you're just able to throw them onto a bench? What type of I'm really trying to think of how to phrase it. What Stage 2s do you think would synergize well together that wouldn't necessarily be in a deck together just because their evolution lines would be so clunky and contrasting? But either way, the ones that I went with were Gallade, Decidueye, and Vikavolt with a Tech Vileplume, and I'm just going to get straight into the deck. Basically, Lifesplosion, what it does, for each energy attached to this Pokemon, search your deck for a Stage 2 and put it onto your bench. Ridiculously strong with the combination of Forest Giant Plants and Cradily. You're able to Lifesplosion turn 1, and then the Stage 2s that I went with are Premonition, Gallade. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put them back in any order, and then also Sensitive Blade, 60 and 70 more if you play a supporter during your turn. Well, odds are you're going to be playing a supporter, because let's be real, this is Pokemon. Everybody plays supporters, and you only don't play a supporter if you don't have one. So 90% of the time, Sensitive Blade's going to be able to hit for 130 damage, and then the reason that I'm throwing Gallade in this is because of that colorless energy cost. Now, Vikavolt was suggested to me by Lukeanator, and I think this is a really underrated card because Strong Charge, once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Grass Energy and a Lightning Energy and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Ridiculous for, I say ridiculous quite a bit. Sorry about that. It is an incredibly strong card in terms of energy acceleration because you just search your deck for 2 energy cards and put them on your Pokemon, and then Electro Cannon. 150 for 4 energy from a non-EX attacker that has ways of accelerating energy to itself. That is very, very strong as well. So Vikavolt is really the engine of the deck. It's going to be the Stage 2 that you Lifesplosion for immediately. Like, this is the one that you get down turn 1 when you are only able to go for a single Lifesplosion, like go for a single Stage 2 Lifesplosion, because once Vikavolt's on the field, you can attach more energy to get Lifesplosion for more Stage 2s. You can power up Gallade in just one Strong Charge. You can power up Decidueye as well. Vikavolt makes this deck go, and is why it's the most important one to get out immediately. The other Stage 2 I'm combining it with is Decidueye-GX. Now, this was one I was kind of like, well, I mean, Vikavolt attaches Grass Energy. Cradily gets out Stage 2s. What's the best Grass Stage 2 in the game right now? Decidueye. So I threw that in the deck. Gives us a GX attack with Hollow Hunt. Gives us another incredible ability in Feather Arrow. And Razor Leaf just hitting for 90. You can power that up in 1 turn with Strong Charge. It fits really, really well in this deck, and I have never, in my testing of this deck, despite losing all the time, I have not been disappointed when I've been able to get Decidueye out. And then the final Stage 2 in this deck that's not Talonflame is Vileplume with the Irritating Pollen. Each player can't play items from his or her hand, just kind of a, well, I'm up against a deck that can absolutely destroy me, so I'm going to try to slow them down a little bit with Irritating Pollen and being able to just shut off items, slow them down. And one cool thing, well, not necessarily cool, but with this, with the way that you get Vileplume out in this deck, you're not able to attach a float stone onto it. So as you can see, I have no float stones attached because as soon as you play Vileplume down, you play it directly from the deck. There's no way of getting a float stone on it unless you Hex Maniac, but then that gives your opponent items, which is really just kind of a thing that you don't want to do if you're going to go for Vileplume. So I mean, I have a Tech Olympia in there to get Vileplume out of the active spot if it gets Lysandred. And 3 for 70 is not ideal, but in this deck, with Vikavolt Strong Charge, if you attach a Grass Energy manually from hand, then you Strong Charge onto Vileplume, you're able to get a Solar Beam in one turn if your opponent Lysanders that thing up. So, I mean, yeah, 70 damage for 3 is not great, particularly on a Stage 2. However, it's something that we can work with, and when you combine it with Feather Arrow, it actually can rack up some decent damage. So, I mean, that's why I'm running Vileplume without any float stones, because it actually isn't the worst thing in the world in this deck, and also just allows you to buy time, which, let's be real, this deck needs. Now, as for the Pokemon that I am starting with, you can see, well, can't start with any of my Stage 2s. Lileep, okay, Lileep I want to talk about really quick. Lileep, Prehistoric Call. Once during your turn, if this card's in your discard pile, you may put it on the bottom of your deck. Perfect synergy with Root Fossil. That's why I'm running a couple Battle Compressor, because you throw Lileep into the discard pile, and then as soon as you have a Root Fossil, you Prehistoric Call, put it on the bottom of your deck, and you have an immediate Lileep. So, I mean, that's one of the little combos that this deck has. But, I mean, either way, 3 Lileep, 3 Cradily, but as you can see, all of these Pokemon you can't start with, because you have 4 Stage 2s, you have a restored Pokemon, you have a Pokemon that evolves from a restored Pokemon. So, what is our basic? We can't run a deck without a basic. So, the one basic in this deck is going to be Shaymin-EX. Now, why Shaymin? Well, Shaymin draws you cards. Is that the best thing to start with? No, it's actually kind of a horrible thing to start with, but we are kind of remedying that in that we are throwing 3 Talonflame into the deck for Gale Wings. If you have Talonflame in your opening hand, you will be able to play it as your active Pokemon. And the reason I only have 3 and not 4 is because 3 Talonflame and 1 Shaymin gives you a 75% chance of starting with a Talonflame, while 4 Talonflame and 1 Shaymin only gives you an 80%. So, I mean, yeah, putting another Talonflame would give me a technically higher percent chance, but it's only a 5% difference. And also, this deck is kind of crammed for room as is, so I decided to just get rid of 1 copy of Talonflame. So, I mean, still, 75% chance of starting with Talonflame. However, there still is that 25% chance to start with Shaymin. But, I mean, these are the guys that we're going to be starting with. Aeroblitz, 1 for 40, colorless, that's the main thing. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them in your hand. That's incredible for our very combo-based deck, and being able to, like, put things back that we don't want and grab things that we do need. So yeah, really, the goal of this deck, start with Talonflame. The free retreat allows you to set up a Lileep and Cradily on the bench, Lifesplosion immediately for a Vikavolt. Technically, well, I mean, theoretically, you want to have 2 Cradily out, because your first Cradily is probably going to get knocked out. It only has 120 HP, so you get that first Cradily knocked out after you have a Vikavolt on the bench. Then you send up the next Cradily, Strong Charge 2 things onto it, attach something to something on the attach an energy to something on the bench, and then Lifesplosion for the Gallade and Decidueye, and by then you have your board set up, your opponent is up 2 prizes, you can disrupt them with N, and then you go from there. So that is the main strategy of the deck. Vileplume is only for matchups where you're like, well, my opponent's just going to blow me away if I don't get an item lock up immediately. So in cases like that, you can get a Vileplume up turn 1 and then Lifesplosion with Vileplume on the bench. But normally, Vileplume's just kind of a, well, I'm just going to play it if I need to. As for the items, 2 Battle Compressor for the combination of Lileep and Root Fossil. Like I said, you just Battle Compressor, throw Lileep into the discard pile, and then when you have a Root Fossil, use Prehistoric Call to put it on the bottom of your deck. Also, Battle Compressor is great for the rest of your Talonflames, because those things are dead in the deck after you start with 1, so they're a way of just throwing them into the discard pile. Actually, I take that back. Talonflame is actually not dead in this deck once you don't start with it, because you can get it with Lifesplosion. Now, is that something you want to get with Lifesplosion? Not really. You'd rather get a Gallade, a Decidueye, a Vikavolt, or a Vileplume, but Talonflame is not as dead in this deck after you start with 1 as it usually is. However, once again, I usually just get rid of the Talonflame with my Battle Compressor. One, Computer Search to help get the piece we need for our combos, because again, very, very combo-based deck. I mean, let's just look at getting a Cradily up first turn. You normally, okay, you battle Compressor, throw Lileep into the discard pile, then you Root Fossil to put it onto your bench, then you have to have a Force to Giant Plants, then you have to have a Cradily, then you have to have a Grass Energy. So this deck is more combo-based than a lot of other decks that I have played. So you really do need Computer Search to get that one puzzle piece that you're missing. 4, Root Fossil Lileeps to get our Lileeps out. Try to get them out as quickly and consistently as possible. 3, Trainers Mail. I'd like to run 4, but there just is not room in this deck. It helps with consistency. 4, Ultra Ball. I mean, this is really just for Shaymin and then bringing out your Cradillys. Like, Ultra Ball is just for those, because those are the only things that you really want to search for and bring out of your deck. There's also the discard option. So, I mean, you can get rid of an Ultra Ball for a Trainer's Mail, or like an Ultra Ball, 2 Ultra Ball for a Trainer's Mail and a Battle Compressor, but I just like having that Ultra Ball to be able to grab the Shaymin when I want it. So that's why I decided to run 4, but definitely tinker with that, because there really is not a lot of searching from your deck to put in your hand that is in this entire deck list, because, I mean, Cradily searches from the deck, and other than that, you really don't do much. You really don't do much searching and playing Pokemon apart from that. VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. Yes, we are using VS Seeker and Vileplume, because Vileplume's not something that this deck is centered around. It's just an option that this deck has. 3 Force to Giant Plants. Again, would like to run 4, but this deck does not have a lot of room. But Forest is to go immediately from Lileep into Cradily. If you go second, you can get a Lifesplosion up turn 1. Brock's Grit, I decided to use over Super Rod, because with Vikavolt, I found that in decks that I use Vikavolt in, I run out of energy quite a bit. Whether that be like discarding them early on, having a Pokemon with a bunch of energy knocked out, etc., etc. Brock's Grit is a great way to just be like, okay, I got a handful of energy, I'm just throwing it back into the deck to be able to strong charge with. Because Vikavolt needs stuff to be from the deck. Also, Lifesplosion needs to be from the deck. So, like, if you discard like Decidueye and Gallade early on and you want to get those, be able to Lifesplosion those, Brock's Grit gets energy back in the deck, but also gets the stage 2s that you want to search for. So very, very strong. I highly recommend Brock's Grit over Super Rod just because of the sheer number it gets. 2, Lysandre, because I mean Lysandre is great. 3-2 of N and Sycamore. Now the reason I'm running 3-2 instead of my normal 4-2 is because I threw in 1 Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. Now this deck is not geared towards getting a turn 1 Maxie or a consistent Maxie, but we are running a couple Gallade, and Maxie is another way to be able to get a Gallade out if you have the cards that allow you to be able to get it out. Odds are you won't be able to, but it is just like a, well, already running Gallade anyway, might as well just throw in a Tech Maxie just in case we're able to get a combination of cards that allows us to pull that off. And then finally, 1 Olympia for the Vileplume situation, because again, Vileplume can't have a Float Stone, so if it gets Lysandred out, yes, you can attack for Solar Beam, but it's not ideal. Olympia is kind of a 1-card way of being like, okay, let's just switch Vileplume out of the active. And then finally, for the energy, I've been talking way too long, just 7 Grass and 5 Lightning. More Grass than Lightning because more of our attackers need Grass than need Lightning. However, I still want to have about the same number. That way I can strong charge as much as possible and get the maximum value out of my strong charge. So yeah, this deck, I affectionately call it Craptacular Cradily because 99% of the time this deck is awful, and that's where the crap part comes from. And then also the 1% spectacular is when you're actually able to get it going. So I mean, yeah, Craptacular Cradily, also alliteration for those of you English nerds out there, which admittedly I came up with it, so I'm a nerd too, but you guys already knew that because I play Pokemon. At this point, I'm rambling. Let's go ahead and actually see this deck do something. Alrighty, we have found one against Unreal Masada, who unfortunately looks like he's using a real deck, so this is probably just gonna go very downhill very quickly. But either way, I mean, then again, I think that with literally every single matchup that this deck has gone up against, and if I'm gonna be honest, I've kind of just been getting destroyed while using this deck, and the reason I'm not showing those matches is because, because that it's really just me not being able to get anything going at all and my opponent steamrolling me. So, I mean, I figure you guys don't want to see me just be like, well, can't do anything, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just lose. But, I mean, at least I'm gonna tell you about it. So that way it's not like, oh, this deck is amazing and he never loses with it. No, I'm losing quite a bit. I'm just not showing it because they're not even entertaining losses or losses that you can learn from. I mean, they're just losses where it's like, well, I lose, there's nothing I can do about it, so, yeah, go team. Either way, we do get a... I mean, at least we start with the Talonflame. I mean, I built this deck so that it has a 75% chance of starting with Talonflame. But, I mean, then again, there are times where you start with Shaymin and you're just like, well, nothing I can do about that. And I get an I get a Lightning Energy as well. I would have liked a Battle Compressor, because, like I said, the combination of Lileep and Battle Compressor works very, very well. I am just going to grab a Talonflame with this Ultra Ball, because I'm going to be Sycamoring away my hand. Can I hit a Root Fossil? I do not. I have 2 Cradily, not 2 Lileep, so that's unfortunate. I'm going to go ahead and throw the Lightning Energy in the discard pile, because I want to try to Lifesplosion this turn. I mean, I want to try to get a... Cradily into play, but unfortunately, because I don't get a Root Fossil or a Forest of Giant Plants, I'm not going to be able to do that, and wow, I'm getting a whole lot of nothing this start. I mean, luckily, my opponent literally just attached and passed, so there's at least that. I am going to go ahead and Talonflame Aero Blitz. Hopefully, my opponent doesn't get like a Kukui and a DCE, because that would be absolutely devastating for me. But I am going to go ahead and grab that Forest and a Root Fossil so that I can try to at least get a Cradily into play next turn. And I just realized that I screwed up. I should have attached the Lightning Energy to Talonflame. The reason I attached the Grass Energy was because I was thinking, well, I mean, I have more Grass Energy in the deck than Lightning, so I mean, it's not too big of a deal. But luckily, my opponent does attach a DCE and pass, and I top deck the Forest of Giant Plants. Are you kidding me? But either way, gonna throw Lileep on the bottom of the deck, and then let's Root Fossil, get that thing out. At least I'll be able to get a Cradily this turn to start Lifesplosioning. I need to get a Vikavolt out first, because that is the engine of this deck. And, okay, I get a Computer Search as well, so I can potentially get another Lileep going, and I at least get a Grass Energy, so that's pretty nice. Let's grab a Trainers Mail, get a... Do I want the VS Seeker or the Battle Compressor? I think I want the VS Seeker. What's in my discard pile? Yeah, let's go ahead and just grab the VS Seeker, so that I can potentially use Sycamore next turn. Do I want a Computer Search already, or do I want to save that? Let's go ahead and Computer Search, get rid of the Lysandre and the Forest of Giant Plants to grab another Root Fossil. That way I can get another Lileep set up. And yeah, my opponent will be able to, well, basically what I'm planning on is my opponent knocks out my Cradily that I'm going to put active, and then I'll be able to have another Cradily in the back. That way I can Vikavolt energy onto it and be able to Lifesplosion. So that's kind of what I'm going for right here. Let's retreat into my Cradily, Lifesplosion, get the Vikavolt onto my bench, and alright, we're starting to get things going. I'm getting very fortunate right now that my opponent is top decking absolutely nothing. And I mean, like, that's the only reason I'm still in this game. If my opponent was able to get more things going, then I'd probably be in a very bad position. But yeah, my opponent, I mean, yes, he is being able to Psychic immediately, and he has a Muscle Band and a DCE on a completely fresh Espeon. But other than that, I mean, like, I'm in a good position otherwise, because my opponent hasn't been able to get anything else going. But I am going to immediately Strong Charge onto... Let's Strong Charge a Grass and a Lightning. Well, I mean, I have to do a Grass and a Lightning. Let's go ahead and do that. And that. And then, what do I want to put the Grass on? I think I want to put the Grass on the Lileep, on the Cradily on the bench, put the Lightning on the Cradily that's active, and then Sycamore, just draw a fresh hand, and then I can put the Gallade and the Decidueye, and no, I draw into it. I draw into my Decidueye. That sucks. That really sucks. I mean, to be fair, it was kind of half my deck, and I was kind of, well, not really half my deck, but either way, it sucks that I drew into Decidueye, because now I can't get Decidueye and Gallade out. I have to rely on one or the other. If my opponent goes for a Divide GX right now, that's going to be very, very bad, because, I mean, it'll obviously be able to knock out my Talonflame and my Cradily, and my opponent will get 2 prizes off of that, so... Again, only reason I'm even somewhat being able to stay in the game right now is because I attack for... I use Lifesplosion for a single energy, I use Aero Blitz for a single energy. My opponent cannot really build up too much damage with Psychic. I mean, 110 each turn is still pretty... That's still pretty good. But now my opponent will be able to divide GX, set up my benched Cradily for a knockout, knock out my active Cradily and my Talonflame, hit the... Gallade, set that. Actually, it doesn't even matter. My opponent just delinquents. That's okay. Let's get rid of the Ultra Ball, the Sycamore, and just a Grass Energy, because I can always Brock's Grit later. I can always Brock's Grit if I have to. And my opponent, once again, does not have a supporter. So again, only reason I'm able to be in this game right now is because I'm getting lucky in that my opponent is not able to get supporters or anything like that. But I mean, that being said, I feel like even though my opponent isn't able to get anything else set up in the background, I mean, I feel like my opponent is still like in a good position because he's like, well, I mean, I'm able to attack every turn. My opponent isn't able to hit me, and yeah, there's nothing really my opponent can do. So if I had a Decidueye, I actually think I could win. Actually, you know what? I would win on this upcoming turn because all I'd have to do is a Feather Arrow, attach the Lightning onto my Vikavolt, and then Strong Charge the Lightning and the Grass from my deck onto the Vikavolt so that I would be able to hit the Espeon for 150, which would be the knockout. But unfortunately, I drew into my Decidueye, which was not what I wanted to draw into at all. The stage 2s, normally in decks where you run disjointed stage 2s, you want them in the discard pile because of Maxies and Archies. But this is one where I'm like, okay, I just want them in the deck. That is all I want right now. And yeah, my opponent is able to take 2 prizes off of that, have a big hand. I don't like him having that big of a hand, so I am just going to attach the Lightning Energy onto my... Actually, no, let's end first because I only have a limited number of Lightning left in the deck. There we go. At least I'll be able to get a Decidueye with a Lifesplosion now. So what I'm going to do is... Do I want to Battle Compressor or anything? I do finally get the Brock's Grit. That's very, very nice for me. So let's go ahead and Strong Charge. Get a Grass and the last Grass and the last Lightning in my deck, I think. So, I mean, I'm trying to decide who I want to put it on. I could put one on the Vikavolt. Let's go ahead and put a Grass. Let's actually go ahead and... Yeah, let's Grass onto the Gallade, Lightning onto the Cradily. Maybe I have something in my deck that I wasn't thinking about. And unfortunately, no, I just have that one Decidueye, so that was kind of a wasted attachment. Gallade was going to go down if my opponent has a Lysandre anyway, but at this point I'm kind of ending and slightly praying that my opponent isn't able to get much else going at this point. On the bright side, I will be able to Brock's Grit, put energy back into my deck. My opponent does have to Skyla. What's he going to grab? Probably actually just a draw supporter to get something going. Yeah, my opponent just, well, not even a draw supporter, just a Pokemon fan club. So my opponent is still unable to get anything going. That is very, very lucky for us. That's the only reason, like I said, that we're going to be able to stay in this game, because look at that. My opponent is already down to 3 prizes. Oh boy. My opponent's down to 3 prizes. I mean, I at least finally have a setup. I at least finally have something resembling a setup. But unfortunately, right here, I have to Brock's Grit. I mean, I'm going to VS Seeker grab the N. And I could play it to put my opponent down to 3 because I know he has a fan club. But let's go ahead and Battle Compressor, just get rid of some useless cards. Yeah, I mean, there's just an Ultra Ball and a Trainer's Mail there. So while I really, really, really want to end right now, I do just have to Brock's Grit in order to get energy back into my deck. That way I just don't, like, well, 1, that I don't deck out, but 2, that I will continually be able to take advantage of Strong Charge in order to be able to attack and get those extra 2 attachments per turn. But let's go ahead and first Feather Arrow the Decidueye. And while I could have put the Vikavolt active, yes, I know Gallade is going to go down this turn, but I am just going to Premonition. That way I can Shaymin for 2 cards to be able to get an energy at least. That way I can get my 3 attachments per turn instead of just 2 attachments from strong charge. So I am going to go ahead, throw a lightning onto my Gallade, strong charge with a grass and a lightning, put them onto the Decidueye. That way I can at least Razor Leaf later. And while I won't be able to knock out my opponent with a sensitive blade, I mean, at least put him in range of being knocked out with a feather arrow so that I can start taking prizes. So my opponent is going to be... my opponent's going to be down to 2 prizes before we even get to take our first ones. And we see the Tauros come down. So, dang it. That was crap. So I should have just sent up Vikavolt. I really should have. That way it could have knocked out the Espeon, and then I could have still had the Gallade to one-shot the Tauros. But I mean, I didn't know that my opponent was running Tauros in the deck. I thought the Gallade would just be kind of a, okay, I get 1 attack out of you, and then, like, I mean, I don't need a Premonition anymore, because, I mean, my deck's full of energy. I know that. And if I'm just going to Brock Skirt, and I'm probably just going to Brock Skirt again, so my deck will still just be literally full of energy. So I'm going to throw up my Decidueye. So yeah, deck full of energy, that's fine. I actually top deck the grass, so I don't have to waste my strong energy just yet, or my strong charge just yet. Let's go ahead and Lysandre up the Tauros, I think, because... okay, I could Lysandre or I could end. I think I'm just going to Lysandre. That way I keep my opponent from being able to control what he's able to bring active, because I will be able to take the knockout on the Espeon this turn. Tauros, one thing I've noticed, I mean, admittedly, I've been one of those people that's been in fear of Tauros like all game long, but because my opponent's Tauros does not have his GX attack available, I really don't have to worry about it anymore, because yeah, it's going to be able to hit me for 110 with Rage after I Razor Leaf, but it won't be able to just blow me up with a Mad Bull GX after I damage him. So the question is that even what I want to do? Because I did draw another Decidueye. If I Hollow Hunt, I can... if I Hollow Hunt, I can get the cards back in order to be able to... okay, what I was thinking was, if I Hollow Hunt, I'd be able to get the cards to Maxie. However, if I Maxie, then I will deck myself out, and I have no chance of winning. So my best play is to simply just Razor Leaf the Tauros. If my opponent has a DCE, which unfortunately he does, he will be able to hit me for 110 damage. And then I will be able to knock out this Tauros next turn. If my opponent has a... okay, so he'll be able to hit me for 110. I'm going to have to end my opponent down to 2 cards and then pray that he doesn't have a DCE to be able to knock out my Decidueye. Because if he's able to get a DCE off the end, I just lose. However, I did get rid of 1 DCE with his first Espeon. I'll be able to get rid of a 2nd DCE with this Tauros. And then I'm just pray that his 3rd and 4th are in places that will be too difficult to get. Again, I'm still getting very fortunate that my opponent is not being able to draw anything that's going to be able to help them win, that's going to be able to, like, insta-win the game. Like, my opponent has not been getting very good draw support. I mean, that Skyla for a Pokemon fan club, I actually completely disagree with. I think that it would have been just infinitely better to go for a, just grab another supporter. That way, like, you're not... that way you're actually using your supporter to draw cards and not just play Pokemon down. But I mean, again, we're getting pretty lucky here. I am just going to go ahead and Feather Arrow that Espeon that has the energy on it, because that's going to be the one that he attacks with. And then let's go ahead and Razor Leaf knock out the Tauros. Take 2 prizes. And of course, my other stage 2s are in my prizes, so I couldn't have Lifesplosioned with them earlier. That's just kind of funny at this point. I mean, like, this deck is not good, very clunky, and my opponent has a metal, so not sure why the metal's there. It could be like a Cosmoem deck, which would be kind of cool. But he is just going to confuse me. That is the best play that he can go for. Let's go ahead and retreat into my Vikavolt. Once again, my energy turned into fire really quickly. Discard the lightning and the grass. And then let's go ahead and let's Brock Grit to put those back into our deck so we don't deck out. And once again, I'm Brock Gritting again for a full 6 energy. Oh, that's awesome. That's exactly why I run Brock Grit in a Vikavolt deck. That way you have them in the deck to be able to use Strong Charge and whatnot. But yeah, let's go ahead right here. Strong Charge, energy onto my Decidueye. I mean, if my opponent has a Lysandre and an energy, then, I mean, I tip my hat to his top decks. But otherwise, I mean, I will just be able to Electro Cannon for 150 damage. I mean, I discard energy so Vikavolt won't go down. Actually, my opponent has like a Muscle Band and a energy, then Vikavolt will go down. But otherwise, Vikavolt will not go down, and I can just Feather Arrow that Espeon for the win. Again, actually, oh, my opponent just attaches. Does he have the Lysandre? If he has the Lysandre, we lose. Nope, he just Psychics, hits my Vikavolt, and we are able to pull out the victory. Wow. So, again, I mean, I was super lucky in that my opponent was not able to get draw supporters early on. But I mean, again, like, okay, it'd be one thing if my opponent was getting no draw supporters and just wasn't able to attack, was just having to draw and pass. But my opponent was still able to get something going. So I mean, at least I can hang my hat on that a little bit. But I mean, either way, we did get lucky that my opponent wasn't able to just get a full setup to where he'd continually be able to stream Psychics and knock out my Decidueye once I got that powered up. So again, this deck is not very good. If I'm actually being honest, this deck is very bad, but it's a cool concept, and if you can get it going, it's really awesome. So I mean, that's why I describe this deck as craptacular, because 99% of the time it's complete crap, but that 1% of the time where you're able to get a Decidueye, a Vikavolt, and a Gallade on board, then it's spectacular. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.